Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime for the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we essentially did manage to take on the final boss in the game, which appears to be Grape, and that was actually quite challenging, actually. To be more specifically, on the first part of the fight, this is mainly because there are so many attacks that we definitely need to avoid, because honestly, the second part is actually really easy to me though. That is mainly because I can definitely tell for the depth perception, so because of that though, overall, that particular boss fight is a piece of cake, at least to me anyway. So today for this video is about the fact that we're about to get to it with the post-game content. So because of that though, to begin with, we're about to get into the forms of a similar hide and seek challenge ever since in Journey forms within Yoshi's Crafted World, and that's what appears to be by the forms of finding some ninjas. So because of that though, yeah, without further ado, it's about the fact that we're about to get to it with the forms of the first floor in regards to the forms of specifically hide and seek challenges. So because of that though, as you can tell about the fact that we don't seem able to actually have some brand new icons just yet, well that's just mainly because if we talk to one of those specific NPCs, specifically on the right, basically those about the fact that we can able to actually expect that we will come across into a hide and seek challenges. Oh, in addition to that, we can also able to actually have the ability to buy some more dresses and stuff like that. So as you can see, I've decided to change a different dress into a special mermaid dress, because as promised you guys about the fact that I will show off some different variety when it comes to dresses, including different colored ribbons for Stella, so that way it'll just make things a little bit more different when it comes to the forms of different cosmetics and stuff like that, which you probably get the idea what I'm talking about. So yeah, if we ask this person right here, then obviously though about the fact that we can now able to actually participating in doing hide and seek challenge. So because of that though, basically for every single place, well, some exceptions mind you, that if we go onto the forms of the place catalog, as you can see, we've now stumbled across into ourselves 3 hidden ninjas within each and every single place. Well, at least to be more specifically, in floor 1 all the way up to floor 5, because as far as I'm aware, on the basement floor, you can only find one of them in each and every single play in Journey forms within the basement floor, basically. So because of that though, that's essentially what we're going to be doing from now on, because potentially speaking now, not only we can able to go back to the previous plays we've already been into before, but also we might as well able to get ourselves a better chance that not only we can able to actually obtain some more sparkle gems here and there, but it's also with the forms of that particular missing ribbon for the sake of one of those plays during that specific period. So because of that though, let's go into the forms of the Castle of Thorns for presumably for the final time, but this time we're about to find every single ninjas in Journey forms within the hide and seek challenges. So because of that though, yeah, it's been a very long while, hasn't it, since we've well, basically going back into this particular play, the Castle of Thorns, which is essentially Act 1 of Sword Fighter Peach. So because of that though, now as far as the hide and seek challenges as far as I'm concerned, I'm usually gonna have to deal with those okay enough. Even though there might be at times though about the fact that sometimes you need to pay attention to the forms of the surroundings, so just in case you can able to actually get a clear idea about the fact that we can able to guarantee to able to actually find those ninja teehees, as far as I'm assuming so anyway. Well, it has been quite some time since I actually have last played this game for sure, because you know about the fact that recently Sonic is now onto Blaze's playthrough now on Sonic Rush. So because of that though, and as you can see, every time if you come across into this rectangular shaped object, that actually signifies that one of those ninjas is actually hiding. So because of that though, you need to get close to them, by the way, in order to able to actually just to find one of those ninjas. Like, here's another example in just about in this section right here, where basically though, if you think you're missing something, well obviously though you have to see the actual estimation mark right here, so that way you can able to actually find one of the ninjas. So, and I'm about to go after them all, just for the sake of the forms of the 100% completion playthrough, basically. So because of that though, now, as far as the other contents they obviously got, aside from the fact that there's even more dresses that we can able to actually try to purchase and unlock by not only we can able to actually get one dress, but 2 dresses if you manage to beat the game for the first time. And same plus with the forms of those different colored ribbons for Stella, by the way, which then again though, we'll talk more details about that, because for now, this will be a best method to me anyway, because obviously though is about the fact that when it comes to grinding coins and such, then basically though, that will gives me a huge opportunity to able to actually just to go after some more coins, especially noticeable concerning for the fact that if we do manage to able to recollect the exact same sparkle gems as our first attempt, and basically though, it just gives us some extra amount of coins, and that could be also applies for the fact that if we come across into red balloons, potentially, then obviously though, that's another good method to able to actually grind for more coins. You need to pay attention to the forms of, you know, more stackering coins, potentially speaking though, so that way you get the huge benefit for the doubt when it comes to able to actually obtaining some more coins here and there. So anyway, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 16th of May today, in some cases in 2024 today, and ladies and gentlemen, we've only got 1 week left until Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake is definitely going to be coming. So because of that though, still I'm basically excited for that, especially noticeable concerning for the fact that I just seriously cannot wait until I'm able to actually experience that game again, but this time on the glorious Nintendo Switch. So because of that though, even though about the fact that it's kind of unfortunate for me that I couldn't seem to able to actually get the pre-order bonus item, which appears to be this very, very cool, nice little stage display, but because, as far as I'm aware, not only because it was pricey, but it's also I do realize that it was on my Nintendo store exclusive, and on top of all that stuff though, I've immediately come across into a point where that particular pre-order bonus item has already out of stock. So because of that though, maybe I shall see until when, eventually at some point until next week, that I bet that some players are about to able to attempt to do the unboxing video for the likes of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake coming up and during at some point on next week. And it's also worth noting for, hopefully we should able to actually hear more about the forms of certain review scores they did somehow received for the sake of the forms of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch Remake. And despite there are some controversial opinions for that particular remake now, for I've noticed something, specifically with all that particular censorship, and on top of that, 30 frames per second, and on top of all that stuff though, some people don't seem to able to keen on new music as much, but then again though, luckily though, there was actually a new badge that was only exclusive to the Switch Remake, and that's of course the Forms of Nostalgic Tunes badge, which thankfully though, you can able to actually change the background music for your nostalgia memories with, so because of that though, there's always that. Although, the only thing you can only do that though, is that depending on what file selection you're going for, then obviously though is about the fact that you have to buy Nostalgic Tunes 4 times if you manage to able to try to replay through The Thousand Year Door again. And believe it or not though, is about the fact that it might actually cost about 4 coins total within 4 separate save files. Although, don't get me wrong, it's still only going to cost about 1 coin if you manage to able to try to buy that particular Nostalgic Tunes badge. So that's besides the point. So, and it's also worth noting for as well is that yes indeed, only tomorrow actually, is about the fact that until tomorrow, that My Little Pony A Several Heights Mystery is going to be releasing tomorrow for multiple platforms. And as far as I can recall, that I'm not exactly sure what the reviews are is it going to be, but I'm sure enough though is about the fact that we'll let both Mighty and Ray will both mention more about it if they're going to go back onto Super Mario Advance basically. So because of that though, and I'm sure enough though is about the fact that both Mighty and Ray are now onto the halfway point already for the sake of the forms of Super Mario Advance, just before we move on to the next Super Mario Advance game. And that's what appears to be, well, we can't tell you exactly for sure right about now, but that's just mainly because, as you can tell, I'm actually going to be proceeding to certain plays in a much more of a quicker time than the forms of how it does it, since back in during the forms of it whenever we first experienced those specific plays. But that's just mainly because, after all, we've already did somehow obtained every single Sparkle Gems after all, in addition to the forms of the actual the bow and anything else like that, so you probably get the idea what I was expecting for something. Although, it's something that's worth noting for actually, is that unlike in Yoshi's Crafted World, if you do manage to able to find, let's just say Sprout for instance, that basically though is about the fact that if you do somehow manage to find not only a bunch of souvenirs, but it's also with the forms of Sprout himself as well, any hide and seek challenge as well, basically is about the fact that if you think to yourself, oh wow, I somehow managed to able to found all 3 of those specific ninjas as far as you might stumble across into earlier. Well, here's one specific downside to this though when it comes to hide and seek challenges in this game. And that's what it appears to be about the fact that there's no option for you to either continue playing the level or simply quitting the level, unlike the forms of how it does it in Yoshi's Crafted World, that again, if you do manage to able to find certain souvenirs or Sprouts in hide and seek challenges, that at the very least they do have the option to either continue playing the stage or even just try to able to leave the level and then call it a day. But unfortunately though, that does not seem to be the case in this game this time around, so you have to go for the entire stages all over again, but with a specific different challenge you can able to actually go for. Unless again, if you really want able to continually try to able to actually collecting some more I don't know, sparkle gems or something. Again, I apologize for my tongue twist in the end, folks, but that's just mainly because, as far as I'm aware, that there are so many flies just keeps on hovering around in our room at the moment. So because of that, though, something tells me my tongue is always being hunger at this point about the fact that it just forces me to able to eat some flies, which I refuse, because otherwise, though, you know what I'm talking about. So anyways, here we go, back onto the forms of the first act in terms of Ninja Peach, and as far as we can able to tell, about the fact that it's been, you know, a very long while since we've been able to actually experience the forms of this particular act enjoying the forms of a Ninja Peach, basically. So because of that, though, I'm sure enough, though, is about the fact that I was very excited about the forms of how the fact that we finally get a chance to able to actually hear about the second half in terms of 2024 so far. In terms of the forms of the first-party Nintendo games, after all, because as far as what Sonic has already mentioned about this, and relatively speaking, though, that I kind of believe about the fact that we've actually finally got ourselves a successor to NES remakes, and now calls it Nintendo World Championships NES Edition. But as far as I do notice about something, is about the fact that apparently that Sonic did accidentally say about the fact that with how much games they're included, well, it did mention about the fact that it do manage to contain 13 games on that particular compilation game, but actually as it turns out, he did say about the fact that that was actually quite a large amount of games. Well, actually as it turns out, it was actually like quite a good amount of games as far as what he was meant to say anyway, because as far as I'm aware, unlike in NES Remakes 1, as well as NES Remakes 2, in addition to Ultimate NES Remakes for the 3DS, that's basically does about the fact that it does manage to contain a large amount of games they do have. Like, for instance, I believe in Ultimate NES Remakes for the 3DS, that it does manage to contain 16 games, like 6, or actually kind of think about it, like 8 of them based off from NES Remakes 1, and the other 8 based off from the Sacred Thief forms of NES Remakes 2, combined into 1. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that unlike in, let's just say, NES Remakes 1, that it does also manage to contain, like, oh, I don't know, 16 games or something. Mind you, it's been about 5 years ago since we've last played NES Remakes 2, relatively speaking, for the Wii U, despite the fact that back then, about the fact that we have to deal with the forms of this very annoying rare moments where basically though our Wii U save data has been corrupted, and as a result it did completely wiped out our save data for a certain amount of Wii U games for sure, ranging from Nintendo Land, as well as New Super Mario Bros. U, as well as New Super Luigi U for DLC, as far as the honorable mentions goes. And on top of that, with the forms of Super Mario 3D World, and also Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games, and Splatoon 1, Hyrule Warriors for the Wii U version as far as I'm aware, and also some other stuff here and there as well. But surprisingly enough, it never actually affected on other games potentially, like it still has not been erased my playtime data of Mario Party 10. Mind you about the fact that it's kind of hard for me to go back onto Mario Party 10 these days, because obviously those about the fact that everyone else out there decides they're able to actually play some good old Mario Party games from the past, including the forms of the recent times recently, for the sake of the forms of not only occasional Super Mario Party, but also if the majority of the people out there loves playing Mario Party Superstars now, because obviously though about the fact that online capabilities is actually there from the start. And when it comes to the majority of the mini-games, including the actual board gameplay, that basically those about the fact that, my goodness, the visual presentation looks absolutely not only stunning, but it's also gorgeous, with all that particular HD textures, including some very, very dang good water reflections for the Nintendo Switch Mario Party game, of all things. So because of that though, there's way more details this time around, as you probably already expect. Mind you about the fact it's been about 2 years ago actually, since I actually have last played Mario Party Superstars, believe it or not. Well, this is mainly because, like I said before, I'm basically super hyped about the forms of experiencing Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door on a Switch remake, just before about the fact that not only we've only got 1 week left, but it's also about the fact that, technically speaking, with 7 days as an alternative. So you probably get the idea what I was expecting. So either way, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that speaking of which though, is about the fact that I can't even believe by saying this, is about the fact that it's almost to a point where basically until in next month anyway, that it will mark the 3-year anniversary of the existence of Mario Party Superstars has been announced, alongside with the forms of Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, and on top of that with Metroid Dread, and I'm sure enough though is about the fact that someplace else were able to mention more about it, until roughly next month or so. And it's also worth noting for is that the original The Lion King, you know, of the good old classic 1994 film, was expected to become 30 until next month. Specifically, 30 years. So because of that though, hopefully we'll try to able to actually mention about that and during at some point in the midway portion of June. So, relatively speaking though, that might be seems to be the case, and that could be also say applies with the 25th anniversary of the film's release of Disney's Tarzan, originally came out in 1999. So because of that though, yeah, don't worry, we'll mention more about those during at some point in Journey Films of it next month, for sure. So anyway, so now let's go ahead and move on to Cowgirl in the Wilderness in Journey Forms of the Hide and Seek Challenge. So because of that though, yeah, there's also another thing I want to point out as well. I did somehow manage to stumble across into something earlier, and that's what appears to be about the fact that certain films, specifically in 2023 of all things, that it looks like that so far, that 5 films in particular has been listed for the sake of the forms of net loss for the biggest box office failures in Journey Films of last year in 2023. And some of them are actually related to Disney of all things, and some of them are from DC and all the other stuff. So for instance, the first film we have for the forms of the net loss for the biggest box office failures in 2023. So the first one being is The Marvels, and the second being The Flash, and number 3 goes to Indiana Jones 5, in some cases The Dial of Destiny. It's a shame honestly, because obviously though, I found that film alright, but nowhere near as great as the films of how it does in the original trilogy in my opinion when it comes to Indiana Jones alike. So, plus it's me I guess. And number 4 goes to Wish, and finally Haunted Mansion as the live-action movie, basically. I almost said remake for some reason, because I keep thinking about something else entirely, but that's besides the point. So, anyway, there's also something that's worth noting for, is that it's kind of unfortunate recently about the fact that it's like, recently, ever since in Journey Films event, I would say, since on the 6th of May, or something like that, that one of those actors in particular called Bernard Hill, that it was actually the beloved English actor, that he was 79 years old, that perhaps is more best known for the forms of specific actors for the likes of not only the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but also with the forms of 1997's Titanic as part of the forms of Captain Edward Smith. So, as a result, yeah, it's kind of sad that he passed away. So, because of that, though, yeah, it's also worth noting for, too, that one of those old characters from The Simpsons, which I'm not exactly sure what his name is, though, let me know in the comments down below, but apparently, though, one of these older characters is about to be making its goodbye, for the sake of the forms of The Simpsons anyway. So because of that though, yeah, it's also very sad to see, but either way though, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So, at least I'm assuming so anyway. So, anyways, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that recently what I've noticed is about the fact that thanks to the forms of the new poster has been revealed for the likes of the forms of the Disney Junior series called Ariel, and basically what I've noticed is that the actual logo brand for the likes of Disney Junior has been changed. So because of that though, it's no longer gonna call it just Disney Junior, but to be more specifically, Disney JR stands for a shorter version of Junior. So it does kind of reminds me like a similar vibes as the forms of Nick Jr. logo, for the likes of the majority of the forms of certain channels that you find, for the likes of the forms of the broadcast and all that stuff though. So, it's a bit random to say this for the sake of time. I mean, let's face it though, I don't normally watch that much of preschool channels anymore, but that's just mainly because, you know, I'm just a grown frog, so because of that though, I always attempt able to actually watch certain stuff every once in a while, for the likes of the forms of some fan services alike, ranging from, you know what I'm talking about, with all that Mario stuff, Sonic stuff, and also the Powerpuff Girls, specifically the original series for that particular point, mind you, because I still don't care about the forms of the 2016 rebooted version, just because not only it's, you know, for the change of the voice casts, but it's also about the fact that they messed up with the forms of a lot of animation errors, and also with the forms of some pretty much overutilized with the forms of pop culture references, or some outdated puns and jokes and all that stuff, which, as a matter of fact though, until 2026, it will mark the 10th anniversary of this very rubbish reboot of the Powerpuff Girls, which you probably already know what I'm talking about here. So, anyway, and of course, we can never forget to mention about the forms of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, because still to me though, Friendship is Magic is more definitive way experiencing My Little Pony cartoon series to me anyway, because of all that particular unique art style, as well as some very dang good writing, and on top of all that stuff though, I still find that show to be a blast to sit through. Especially noticeable, it's been like, you know, 5 years ago, since In Journey Forms of Bin Season 9 was actually first started, since In Journey Forms of Bin 2019, and I've got incredibly hyped about it back then, although I suppose we should probably save that particular topic and join at some point in the later videos to come, for the majority of the forms of Princess Peach Showtime, basically, because as far as I'm aware, that basically though is about the fact that recently, I finally managed able to watch the last few episodes for the sake of the forms of Monsters at Work recently, for the sake of the forms of Season 2. And what do I think about it? It's actually, I'm not gonna lie, it's actually really good series as far as what I did somehow manage to check out. Like, for instance, it's about the fact that I'm probably not gonna spoil things too much, because I'll let you guys manage to able to see it for yourself, basically. So, and I will tell you this right now, I can honestly recommend it, especially noticeable because, obviously though, it does kind of reminds me like a similar vibes for the sake of the forms of the majority of the forms of Season 8, for the likes of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, because as far as I'm aware, they're most likely only focusing on the majority of some characters in Monsters at Work, because usually, relatively speaking though, in Season 8, for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, does manage to focus on the Student 6 for some episodes for sure, like for instance with the forms of, let's just say, What Lies Beneath, and in addition to the forms of the Heart-Swarming Club, I think is what it says anyway, and that could be also applied to the forms of the School Days Part 1 and 2, and also in addition to the forms of some other episodes in particular, like some terrible ones for sure, like Non-Complete Claws, because obviously that episode is basically just a rehash of the forms of Full Weather Friends, basically, back in Season 1, except the fact that the actual character development has got a lot worse back then, during the forms of in 2018 for sure. And I've heard that some people complain about the fact that episode 18 of Season 8 is now becoming the new worst episode of the entire, well, cartoon series when it comes to My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, which I honestly don't blame you for that, but that's just mainly because no matter what though, I haven't touched that episode since, but that's just mainly because no matter what though, it's just one of those character developments seems to feel a little bit more stripped down compared to the forms of how it does it in the previous seasons, since, well, let's just say, I will say this right now, that Season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are simply the actual decline factor when it comes to the forms of, you know, the amazing series I've ever seen since Journey forms have been back in 2012, basically. And as far as I can tell, that Season 9 is definitely a really dang great one, actually. Whilst, mind you, I will admit, though, Season 8, while looking back on it, though, it is definitely now my least favorite season in terms of the forms of Friendship is Magic, in my opinion. I mean, some episodes we do have is cool all in all, like for instance, On the Road to Friendship is actually a really dang good one. And in addition to that, though, is about the fact I feel like the climax in Journey Forms of the finale is actually a pretty good one. But aside from all that stuff, though, certain episodes are hit and miss, and 2 of them in particular are pretty bad, ranging from, you know what I'm saying, Non-Complete Claws and Yakida Sax. I think it's what it says anyway. So either way, though, yeah, that's what I can really think about it. Also, in addition to that, though, is that ever since in about, I would say last week or something, that basically, though, one of those films in particular called Star Trek, in 2009, that is. Basically, though, that film is now became 15 years old recently. So because of that, though, yeah, happy 15th anniversary of the film's release of Star Trek, released in 2009. So because of that, though, I have not seen that film, though, but that's just mainly because I definitely heard about the series, don't get me wrong, but I just have no words to able to actually just notice I might give that series a shot, or perhaps even maybe because I'm a little bit more of a different bias when it comes to preferring certain franchises I do tend to enjoy, or something like that. Although I might be curious to check it out, but my expectations might feel a bit, you know what I'm talking about, just feels a bit unexpected or something. So anyways, as you can tell, we've somehow managed able to finish up everything for the likes of the Cowgirl stage Act 1. So now we move on to Act 1 in Patisserie Peach. Now, for the most part, I did manage able to complete certain plays within the quickest amount of time, if possible. However, there are certain plays that tend to make the entire process, it feels a little bit too lengthy for my liking. To be more specifically about the fact that when it comes to Patisserie Peach, for the likes of not only for Act 1, but also with Act 2, as well as Act 3, and that could be also applies for Detective Peach as well, that it will be very lengthy when it comes to getting to the whole stage-to-stage kind of process there, especially noticeable considering for the fact that what we attempted to try to do when it comes to dealing with the forms of the hide-and-seek challenges and all that stuff, we'll attempt to able to actually go for one area for the likes of in one of those videos in particular, and then as soon as we move on to next Tuesday and next Thursday essentially, then obviously though we'll tackle through area 2, as well as, well, to be more accurate though, Floor 2 and Floor 3 within those separate videos respectively, just to ensure for the fact that we don't want to make the actual process feel a bit too lengthy. So because of that though, and well, to be speaking, I was about the fact that there's also some additions here and there as well that I suppose I forgot to mention about, and that's what appears to be about the fact that I believe there was actually a new shop has been added, which allows you to able to actually use these sparkle gems, so that way you can able to actually buy certain furnitures depending on what floors you're going to be able to be buying through for certain items like furnitures and stuff like that, to able to add in as part of the decoration set. So yeah, that's essentially how this the new shop decides to come into play. And relatively speaking though, then again, I will try my best able to actually just to buy certain furnitures, and especially noticeable concerning for the fact that we do need to able to get a whole bunch of sparkle gems for not only trying to collect them, but it's also about the fact that I noticed something about this as well, that the boss challenges are now accessible, which thankfully you can able to actually replay certain bosses now, just like the forms of how it does it in the majority of the forms of good feel games for sure, ranging from Warrior Land, the Shake Dimension, as well as Kirby's Epic Yarn, including the Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn as the 3DS port. And on top of all that stuff though, Yoshi's Woolly World, and of course Yoshi's Crafted World. So because of that though, and this time it's now Peach's time to able to actually fight against with the forms of certain boss fights as in rematches. So because of that though, except those one little thing you might able to actually on about, and as of course, mission objectives has now been addressed for the sake of the forms of the actual boss challenges basically. So because of that though, I will admit it though right away, I'm actually going to be saving up the boss challenges for last, but that's just mainly because I will admit though, boss challenges is, without a doubt, is the hardest aspect when it comes to going for 100% completion in Princess Peach Showtime in my opinion. Mainly because no matter what though, is that certain mission objectives are self-explanatory, like one of them you can't afford to able to get hit, just like the forms of how it does it on most boss challenges from other games for Warrior Land, the Shake Dimension, as well as Yoshi's Crafted World, and you probably named the idea. And there's also the objective where you have to do the specific conditions and all that stuff. But thankfully though, there's no time mission objectives this time around, which I suppose that's generally a good thing, so I don't have to like rush things too much, because unlike in not only Warrior Land, the Shake Dimension, but also with Yoshi's Crafted World as well, that basically though I have to be quick about the forms of certain bosses when it comes to completing certain mission objectives, which you probably get the idea what I was trying to say about this right here. So, and as far as I'm aware, it's about the fact that there's also another thing that's worth noting for, is that it may look like that Bob Iger has been announced that the Marvel Studios will reduce their output to, let's just say, 2 different categories within the forms of specific production line for the forms of certain movies as well as TV shows respectively. Like, for instance, they've mentioned about the fact that 2 or 3 films per year and 2 TV shows per year. So because of that though, that might be quite enough for now, especially concerning for the fact that obviously we are still waiting for the next Marvel thing is going to be coming out during at some point in 2 months time. That's of course Deadpool and Wolverine. So because of that though, still I'm basically excited about that, and it's especially noticeable it's been, you know, I would say it's been about 6 years since the last Deadpool movie, since Deadpool 2 back in 2018, with this very cool My Little Pony reference here and there with all that particular. Deadpool was actually saying to one of those characters, like a pink hair and stuff like that, like it's, you know, you get the idea what I'm talking about when he mentions like, just like Pinkie Pie from My Little Pony. And there's also another one of those references they somehow mentioned that in Journey forms of in the Death Battle videos, which, yeah, you probably get the idea what I'm talking about here. So, there's also another thing I want to mention about this as well, is that what I'm essentially going to do when it comes to the forms of post-content for the likes of this game in particular. As I mentioned this before, I'll save the boss challenges for last, and on top of all that stuff though, there's also the forms of, well, hide-and-seek challenges, which we are still doing those right now, and in addition to that, there's also some rehearsals that we can able to actually now participating in for, because after all we can now able to actually access to the 5th and final rehearsal in Journey forms of this game in particular, but then again we'll save those for later after we're done with the forms of the majority of the hide and seek challenges. So because of that though, we still have no idea how long that these specific challenges might able to actually took me exactly, but I'm sure enough though is about the fact that I'm obviously gonna have to able to do some more recording sessions when it comes to the forms of this game in particular for still taking place in Tuesdays and Thursdays from now on, and I'm really hoping about the fact that we can able to get this game done just before the second half of the year is fastly approaching. So because of that though, speaking of something related to the forms of the second half of the year, that basically though is about the fact that, like what I said this before, that I can't believe we're finally going to be getting certain games for the second half of the year, like for instance Nintendo World Championships NES edition. So now, as far as I'm aware, we can't really tell you exactly for sure. We might get the game digitally or physically, although there's only one particular point that Sonic has totally forgot to mention about this, is that unfortunately though, getting the game physically is actually locked out behind My Nintendo Store, which as a result, it feels a bit, kind of, annoyingly consistent to me though. Plus it's mainly because I always attempt to try my best to actually gather the majority of the Mario games physically for the Nintendo Switch, but apparently though it's about the fact that, well, then again, we'll have to wait and see what happens in due time, especially noticeable considering for the fact that both Mighty and Ray have once again able to actually reorganize certain positions recently, not only for shelving department, but also about the fact that we attempt to move certain game systems every once in a while for our video game cabinet shelf. Like, for instance, we've now placed our Wii U right next to our PlayStation 1. Well, we were originally able to actually keep the Wii U down with the forms of the other two Nintendo Wiis we have. One of them plays UK stuff, and the other one plays USA games, like only two of them to be exact, which is of course Mario Super Sluggers and Kirby's Dream Collection, which you probably already know about that ever since in last year, basically. So, and as far as I'm aware, that we somehow now decided to put in our third Nintendo Wii, despite the fact that it no longer reads discs anymore, but rather we can to experience certain virtual console games and WiiWare games, so that way it gets us a huge opportunity to actually do some even more Let's Plays for certain games for the sake of the forms of the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console lineup, for the majority of the N64 games, as well as the forms of some WiiWare games as well. There are a couple of exceptions here and there, but then again, no, it's probably best to save that particular topic during at some point in a later time. So, but if we think we are basically done everything in Floor 1, well, actually as it turns out, there is technically one last thing we need to do in Floor 1. That's of course trying to actually have a rematch against with the forms of Disco Wing, but then again, I'll save the boss challenges for last, because obviously though, some of these missions are self-explanatory, like I said before, but some of them are actually virtually impossible to complete, because I have no idea what I was expecting to try to do something like this, especially considering for the fact that, wow, I did manage to experience certain missions off-screen during the forms of my own spare playtime for a bit, and my goodness, I was literally so close to actually complete certain objectives. So, anyway, so as you can see, I've managed to purchase not only the special dress for Peach, but also a grape dress as well, to make things a little bit more interesting when it comes to cosmetics and all that stuff. But here's the thing though, it only costs about 500 coins. I could assure you about the fact that if we do manage to accomplish certain things, then obviously though it's about the fact that the price tags when it comes to collecting coins is actually going to get extremely expensive. So because of that though, yeah, you probably get the idea what I was expecting for something. So yeah, as you can see, we've actually got ourselves a nice little completion icon if you do manage to collect not only every single sparkle gems, but also finding certain bows or ribbons, and finally trying to find every single ninjas in journey forms of these well-hidden locations. So because of that though, again, if you missed one of them, obviously though you can to restart the entire play again if you decide to try to find the forms of that particular, well, ninjas, as far as I'm aware. And also, as you can see, there's actually a new shop that has been added, and as you can tell, again, in order to actually buy any other furniture or certain decorations in each and every single floor, you have to basically use these sparkle gems in order to actually spend on something. Like, for instance, we've got some more decorations up in Floor 1, and also we've got ourselves a pretty cool Stella statue in the middle portion of Floor 1. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell. So with that being said, folks, is that we'll say this right now, we got the endings off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime. Is that we're about to continue experiencing hide-and-seek challenges, but except this time we're not going to be ended up in Floor 2. So some ninjas are pretty easy to find, and some of them are actually well hidden, so I will try my best. So I'll see you guys until next Tuesday. Later, fellas.